for me, rock and roll is about freedom. It's about the freedom to express your feelings very loudly in public. And that moment of everybody yelling yay and nobody thinking about paying the rent is the moment I try to capture.
Welcome back to Innersleeve, exclusively on SoundMojo. I'm your host, Cassius Morris, joined by Frank Pavan, Joe Pacheco. Another week, another episode, guys. What's happening?
29, Joe.
29.
And Cassius, man. I didn't mean to just address Joe there. My bad.
I'm sorely offended, thoroughly offended.
Yeah, 29, one away from 30. It's good. We've got a very special guest. I mean, I feel like every guest is special, but sometimes they hit a bit closer to the heart. This guy, right? This week's episode, Bob Gruen, specifically.
Bob Gruen, the one and only legend of photography. Of course, former personal photographer for John Lennon and Yoko Ono, actually living with them at points at the Dakota, so we talk all about them. He shot one of the most iconic Kiss album covers and album covers ever, Dressed to Kill, which we're going to talk about. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, and I know, Joe, you do a lot of photography too, like as a photographer, just learning about what cameras were like, for lack of a better expression, before I was alive blew my mind, you know?
Yeah. That's scary when I was alive.
Yeah, before I was alive.
Yeah, no, that's actually my first point here of takeaway is that he started so young, right? He started at 11 and with his mom and all that stuff. Not to ruin it too much, but like one thing that really impressed me is that to hear a guy who's in the thick of it, right? He's in like, the heart of like you said, John Lennon, Kiss, like the top of the top. And you'd peg him to be a purist of analog equipment and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And then, when I heard him say, oh man, when autofocus came in and then auto exposure, it was like so much easier, it made my life so simple, and you could take more pictures. And I realized, wow, it's so rare to hear someone who's like a professional like that for years and years. Usually they always bitch and complain and
the old school mentality.
Yeah,
100%.
This was really, because I know what he's talking about, man. I totally know what he's talking about. Like when I was shooting weddings, you don't realize that like, okay, you're inside the church now and you're shooting, so you have your exposure set for one line. Then you go outside, you start to take pictures, you look like they're all blown out because outside it's sunny. And,
exactly.
And with concert, it happens at every 2 seconds, right? Pop, pop, lights, lasers, darkness. And so, yeah.
It was probably a relief for him.
Well,
I mean, it's insane what he had to go through.
There's 2 steps less to think about. You don't have to worry about, is it bright enough and you missed the shot? No, now it's just take the shot. So it's like it allows you to really capture the moment, not worry about like a couple of details that like, that just, I was really impressed to hear
totally.
That. Like, it was, and then like his whole perspective on the iPhone, and that he shot a show with the iPhone and was totally amazed at it. Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy too.
I love it when these legends, like even Daniel Lanois, I remember once like on a forum, people were saying, how did you get this tone? What amp did you use? He's like, I shoved this SM57. The best amp, the best room I have in my studio is a closet. And he would shove the amp in a closet. So it's like, people get so psyched into all the details and the tech and stuff, whereas really the job is take the picture.
Oh man, I couldn't agree more, Joe. And it actually blew my mind too, because we just published a concert review that is brand new, so go check that out if you want more on this. But I just covered an event here for SoundMojo, and I used a variety of different cameras. I had a DSLR, I had a smaller digital video camera, and an iPhone. And I found that the smaller my camera got, the more side eyes I got, and the more I even heard this one guy, this super drunk guy, going to his friend, cheap audio, when I wasn't even recording audio, but he's like, look at this cheap audio. And I was like, but Bob Gruen says this is a good camera.
Yeah, there's like a famous photographer, Chase Jarvis, who always says the best camera is the one you have on you. That's the best camera. Because if you have it, that's the one. Take the shot. Like you're going to worry about, I get it back in the day when he was saying about like, you take 12 pictures digitally, then you have to dump, offload them. Whereas now, dude, I've taken I've taken easily in the first 2 years of photography, I must have taken over 100,000 pictures because it's all digital now. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not film. It's not whatever. So
huge memory cards.
Yeah.
Huge. And I even found it difficult when I first started shooting to get good photos, and I was thinking, boy, if I found it difficult to learn with everything automated, imagine how difficult it was before. So we're gonna hop all into that with Bob, but before we do, there's maybe some little anecdotes on this article that popped up. there seems to be friction between Taylor Swift and Spotify. Am I off base here? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah. So there was a recent article that was posted earlier this week from NME. And it's basically a former Spotify boss by the name of Jim Anderson says that artists are entitled, air quotations, in asking for streaming rise. So in around April 2021, Apple Music upped their streaming rate. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, to 1 penny per thousand. Is it? Or let me see here. Let me get this right. I don't want to misspeak here. Yeah, one per stream. Excuse me, per stream. 1 penny per stream. And anyway, so the interviewer who was interviewing this former Spotify executive, Jim Anderson, kind of triggered his thought process a little bit, and he said Spotify's entire business model has faced the scrutiny in years, and he basically just went off and said, we should talk about the entitlement of artists. And this is his quote. I mean, I have an issue with Taylor Swift's comments. I have this issue with it, and we'll call it entitlement. I mean, I consider myself an artist because I'm an inventor, okay? Now I freely give away my patents for nothing. I never collect royalties on anything. Just to continue his quote, which I feel like this one may stick with some people, is that the problem, he claims that Spotify, the problem was to distribute music, to eliminate piracy, not to give you money, okay? The problem was to distribute the music. So that's where his stance is. Interesting, though, what I might ask...
so triggered.
See, this is someone who's now unfiltered because he's a former employee, okay?
He's got FU money.
He probably... Right. Mm-hmm. He probably won't be saying this as vocally and expressive if he's still employed, but maybe that sheds light on how the internal culture thinks in Spotify.
Of course, man. Like this pisses me off because, okay, so would you have a salary if nobody made music? Would you have a job, this guy? No. Spotify exists because music exists, right? So does Apple. They take the stuff and they're giving it to the consumer. It's easier. It's facilitated, right?
Yes.
I'll give him one credit, 100% piracy. Thank the Lord that shit, that's gone and or relatively gone, right? In terms of it's not even worth it anymore. Just Spotify
made a massive impact on it.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that. But now it's man, come on. Here, this guy probably makes a 6-figure salary, right? Yep. And you're telling artists that they're entitled? Screw you. You wouldn't have a salary if you didn't have the artist making that music, So that pisses me off to no end. Anyways, I'm going to stop before I
hear you. No, I hear you.
Joe's triggered. Triggered Joe.
Joe is triggered.
Come on,
I have to play devil's advocate a little bit, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of understand what he's saying. I don't agree that the artists don't deserve more. I mean, we're talking pennies. I mean, let's get real here. But at the same token, this is what I tell artists who say this to me. I say, if you want, if money is really what you're after, then put down your guitar. Because the sad reality of it is that the people who make the most money are never going to be the guys with the guitar. It's going to be the guy that signs that guy with the guitar. And it's just I hate that that's the way it is, but I can't change it. So it's if you want to be a CEO, be a CEO. What do you think of that perspective, Joe?
Well, I think it's fair, to say, but I mean, what's this guy? Just because he was saying before, I don't collect I'm an inventor. Well, that's your choice. That's your choice not to collect or to collect. No one would hate you anymore if you collected, right? You're allowed to be Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and make that. There's nothing wrong. It's capitalism. That's what it is. That's what it's for. You're giving people jobs. You're employing 500,000 people. So, okay, good. It's the unbridled greed and at all costs. That's where so it's look at the record industry. Hey, we figured out, making a vinyl one had a cost to it, right? So a certain point, right? There's physical cost. Then you want to ship 1,000 vinyls. That is some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So that costs you, right? Now we figured out a way to make a CD where we can put 70 minutes of music, much lighter, and it costs us under $2 to make. Let's still charge them $20. Well, right. The days have caught up with you now, and
that's
now
a great point.
The days have caught up with you now. Like you were saying before, where they're you could choose a guitar or be a CEO, but at the same time, it's that guy's right to want to make money with his art. Now, whether he does or doesn't, that's out of our control, you know?
No, I actually really agree with you. And you know, it is a good point when you talk about the costs, because maybe the argument could be made that in the 70s and 80s and 90s, what artists were making evened out due to what it cost to put artists out. But nowadays, you don't even have to pay the CD price. You're just, it's intangible now. I don't know what it costs to run Spotify, but
it's funny because like on radio, technically I don't know what the exact rate is here in Canada, but it used to be like 7 cents every time your song got played on the radio.
Versus 1 cent on Spotify. That's crazy.
Yeah, but then again, the radio station can only play one song for 200,000 listeners, but on Spotify, 200,000 listeners individually can stream that song. So that makes 200,000 pennies. It's a lot more expensive. So I get that the rate is a huge difference, but it makes a lot more sense because like one radio station versus a million
can only
people.
play one song at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah, while the distributor can play as many songs as they can at a time.
Interesting.
So,
see, this is good. I love this stuff.
I know, it's nuts. It's like there's no perfect answer. And I think, honestly, things have gotten better for artists in the sense that, like you just said, like from your phone. Like I know artists on SoundMojo will record on their phone, mix on the GarageBand on the phone, and upload it through the distributor onto Spotify, all on your phone. You know, and it sounds okay. So getting your music out there. Now, the problem is that you, me, and everyone else can do it. So the problem is still the same. It's noise, right? It's breaking through. It's getting yourself recognized. Yeah. But you do have that advantage. I mean, look how many YouTubers we don't even know that have millions of subscribers. I never heard of them, but they're making they're making a living off of it. So
they have their people.
It has gotten better, you know?
Yeah, definitely gotten better. It's just like, but you know, yes, the scene is cleaned up because it eliminates piracy almost altogether, but it's just tough for the non-Taylor Swifts or the Drakes or the Rihannas to have their work associated with pennies. You know what I mean?
It's like when what's that guy from Queens of the Stone Age, Josh Homme? When Radiohead decided, Radiohead decided like, you know, name your price. You free, pay $1, $10, whatever you want to do, and it was cool. And I remember he was on Jimmy Kimmel, the other guy, Jimmy Fallon, and they asked him, "What do you think about that?" And he said, "Well, it's great if you're Radiohead." You know,
right? You can afford to charge $1.
It's great if you're Radiohead. You'll make $10. You'll make $1 out of, you know. It's at $1, they're probably making more than when they were in their label deal. So imagine that.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
Another thing as we move on here into the episode, I know we're gonna get to Bob soon. I just wanted to hit you guys and the listeners, the viewers, with 2 fun facts. This moment, history. Wait, what the heck are they called? This moment in history, in music history. We're gonna bring you back to 2007, July 8th, of course, the day of this in which this episode airs. July 8th, 2007. Prince was forced off stage by police halfway through his set at the First Avenue nightclub during a late-night gig in his hometown of Minneapolis. The club was only allowed to stay open until 3 a.m., but Prince took the stage at 2:45 a.m.
Was he opening for Kelly? No.
I was just thinking that. But the Prince had already played 2 concerts in Minneapolis before this late night club appearance. His first performance was at a department store where he promoted his new cologne with a 9-song, 45-minute set.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What you know, Prince, he's like, you know, like Dave Chappelle. Like when Dave Chappelle shows up to the Comedy Store or a comedy club, like, it is a 3.5-hour set, and he's smoking on stage. You can't smoke in there, but it's Dave Chappelle. That's what Prince is in music to me.
I would have to agree. I was gonna say that, like, I was ranting about the concert guy and like Guns N' Roses and waiting for that. Maybe it's something in my head, but like with Prince, I would wait. But I would get annoyed if it happened twice. Like if I'd go see Prince another time and there's another 45 minutes late, I would be annoyed as well. But
definitely.
Yeah.
We tend to give him a little bit more leeway.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, once you've written Purple Rain, you can get away with a lot of things, and maybe I'm certainly biased in that regard. Well, you said you had another moment, Frank?
Yep. One last thing. July 8th, 2016. Canadian rapper and singer Drake was at #1 on the U.S. chart with his 4th studio album, Views. With Views, Drake also joined Adele, Michael Bublé, and Taylor Swift as the only artists in the 2010s decade to have an album remain at #1 on the Billboard 200 for 6 consecutive weeks.
Wow.
Cool.
So
Pretty
Summer 16 was kicking off.
Yeah.
That, you know what, man, as a guy who was like just turned 18 at that point, and that's like where you can start going to clubs in Alberta and stuff. Summer 2016 was a fun summer for me, man. It was all about Drake. It was all about views. And I remember when that One Dance song came out, it felt like summer had officially started.
Yeah, that's crazy. That was huge.
You know, that was the start of the summer for me. I remember I was walking down the street and I heard it blasting out of somebody's car, and I'd never heard it. And I looked and it was all these teenagers having so much fun, and I was like, okay, that is the sound of the summer. I'm going to be hearing that for a long time.
Yep.
I'm going to take the opportunity to plug Dre the Music Man. We just put up a video where he talks about the power of teen memories, and you just mentioned it right there. You remember?
Hey, there you go. I got to add to the comments.
And you're like, yeah, totally, man. It's awesome. That's cool.
That's it, guys. That's all I've got. We can cue in Bob here.
Beautiful.
Bob,
well,
let's go, Bob.
Wow, this is a tremendous interview. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Bob Gruen. It looks beautiful in there. So is this your home workshop?
Good. This is my studio. Yes. We live in the same building downstairs. I'm lucky to have a space in the same building here.
Very cool. So what sort of database, Bob? You mentioned that you were trying to access where all your scans are. Is this an internet database? Is this held somewhere else? I mean, where are all of your scans?
No, we have our own server.
Okay.
It's just a common hard drive.
Okay.
Everybody in my studio, my assistants, because I have one person who had to move back to Sweden, and she does my Photoshop fixing and so on.
Okay, very cool. Would you say that you have more photos in your server, or that you have more photos out in the world?
Oh, well, there's a lot of them out in the world. I think there's the most is in my files, because I have hundreds of thousands of pictures. And we have scanned tens of thousands that we have in the server, but it's nowhere near everything.
Right.
That would take, it took a lifetime to make the pictures. It would take a lifetime to scan everything. But we do have quite a lot in the server. And everything I've done since 2000 has been digital. And so that's all in the server.
Interesting.
We don't, everything before 2000, I have negatives and slides and prints, like physical paper prints. But since 2000, we've been digital, and everything has been saved on that server. So it's kind of crucial to have the server working and backed up and back up the backup. And so anyway, I think it's got reconnected today. And it's been offline for months. So it's great that we have, not offline. We've been able to use it, but it hasn't been backed up. So now it's getting backed up. And all I can tell people is back up, because you never know. Somebody kicks out a plug and everything disappears,
Right, and then so much amazing work can be compromised in seconds.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Bob, how did you find the transition from the actual physical copies to digital in 2000 that you just mentioned? Was that a hard transition? Easy?
It was relatively easy because the cameras worked the same, as far as the professional cameras, but better in the sense that I didn't have to focus it. The autofocus. I used the Canon professional camera, Canon Mark V or Mark II. Canon, I forget the numbers, but anyway, I used Canon system. And the autofocus is excellent and fast, and you just touch the button and everything's in focus, and everything's exposed perfectly. When I first started using it, I was amazed at how rapidly, because for me shooting, especially when you're shooting a concert and the lights are going on and off, people don't realize you have to change the exposure every time the lights go on or off, or it gets brighter or dimmer. If there's blue lights instead of yellow lights, it's a different exposure. And that used to be all manual. You have to see it and figure out the light. A lot of people carried a separate light meter or spot meter, we used to call it, that would read the light on somebody's face because the spotlight's on their face. And if the camera's reading the whole frame, it's not going to see the little face. The picture will be right, but the face will be totally washed out.
Right.
So we're constantly used to have to focus as somebody's running across the stage and turning the lens and trying to keep it in focus and thinking about the exposure. And then all of a sudden that all became digital. And I remember the first time I put a roll of film, I had a band in the studio and I was just taking pictures and I wasn't focusing and I wasn't exposing and I was just shooting. And I got to the end of the roll, it seemed like in 2 minutes. I'm like, how did I get here so fast? I took so many pictures,
just in such a short period of time.
Yeah, because you just don't even realize you're not doing all those extra steps of focusing and setting everything. And then I got kind of used to it because it's so easy.
Right.
I mean, I used to know by sight, just if I could walk in a room, I would know it's F5.6 or F8 or, you would just know, like, to judge the light by your eyes. You knew how much light there was.
Wow.
That was 20 years ago I gave that up. So I don't know if I could judge it nowadays.
And it's a good system. So did you actually start shooting concerts? Because you mentioned the difference with the lighting and such.
I learned photography from my mother when I was literally 4 or 5 years old. It was my mom's hobby. And she developed and printed her own pictures, mostly family pictures. She wasn't into art or anything like that. But she liked to develop and print her own pictures. So she took me in the dark room when I was too little to go to sleep early, but too big to go to sleep early, but too little to leave out in the house alone.
Right.
So I have my earliest memories is before they even had tanks, we were developing film where you go up and down in the tray to keep it, the developer even on the whole roll and count the seconds in the dark. So that was something I shared with my mom. And then I became the family photographer. My mom bought me a Brownie Hawkeye and I started taking pictures. And actually when I was 11, I went to summer camp and the campers put on a play. I think it was Oklahoma. And I was down front taking pictures of the campers and I sent the film home to my mom. She made some prints and mailed them back to me and I sold it to the kids that were in the play.
Oh, wow.
And I've basically been doing the same thing ever since, except I have to develop it myself.
Man, got started young though. So you were like 10, 11 years old?
11, yeah, when I started selling pictures.
That is amazing.
Then I used to go to the dances when they would have an event in town. I would bring a Polaroid and all the parents they get dressed up to go out to the benefit dinners and stuff. And I would come around with a Polaroid and take a picture for $5 and it cost me $1. So by the time I was like 13, I was making money doing that. And in fact, it was at those kind of dinners that people thought I was, a little kid with his dad's camera, which basically was my mom's Polaroid. So I bought a Crown Graphic, which is the kind of picture, the kind of camera you see in the old 1940s and 50s, where it's a big sheet film camera. You see a whole bunch of press photographers with this big thing that's got a bellows, and they pull a slide out and turn it around. You actually take one picture at a time.
Do these blow smoke when it takes a picture?
There's a what?
There's some cameras that like a gust of smoke.
Oh, you had to hold up a flash thing. No, I was a little past that. We had actually flash bulbs. But no strobe. But yeah, you had to put in a new flash bulb and a new sheet of film, focus it, expose it, and then get that one shot. Wow. And each piece of film cost about $1 or $2. So you kind of thought about what you were doing before you pushed the button.
It was a little more expensive.
But that way, it was so professional looking. Like nobody had that kind of camera unless they were professional photographers. So instead of being a kid with his dad's camera, all of a sudden I became like very young to be a professional.
Put you in a different
but
world.
It gave me a different aspect to, as respect as a photographer.
At what point did you start to feel, okay, I'm going from taking pictures to being actually a skilled photographer? Like, is that a conscious point in your mind?
Not really, because after high school, in the 60s, there was this idea of turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And my idea of dropping out was to live with a rock and roll band. And I didn't know that was actually falling in instead of dropping out.
Ah, yes.
Because they changed names when they changed drummers. They were the Justice League, and then they were the Pop Art, and eventually they were the Glitter House. And the week they broke up, they had one last gig at which they got discovered by Bob Gruen, who's a world famous producer. And he was working on a Barbarella film at the time, and he used the Glitter House as the backing vocals for the soundtrack. And then he recorded a Glitter House album. At the time, in the late 60s, the lead singer was black and the rest of the band was white. And the record company salesman had a problem with that.
Okay.
So the Glitter House kind of ended up on a bottom shelf, and they didn't really get sold. They are online. There's a spot where you can find some Glitter House records. They played a kind of music called psychedelic pop.
Okay.
Which was kind of a, easygoing, but 60s, very 60s kind of sound.
Is that comparable to Jefferson Airplane in any way? I mean, what would that be comparable to?
Slightly.
Okay. Maybe a little more laid back.
Yeah, I mean, it's very melodical. Bob Gruen, the piano player, Mogi Klingman, ended up making the website. And he's got a lot of other things that the Glitter House did. The Bob Gruen made it really kind of very pop. Bob Gruen he did the Four Seasons.
Okay.
Frankie Valli, that kind of music. And he kind of turned them more into a orchestral sound, which was not really them. But anyway, it didn't sell. I ended up in the music business. I ended up good friends with Bob Gruen. He sent me to the record company with the pictures. I had taken pictures of the band because I was with them all the time. Mm-hmm. And he sent me over to Atlantic Records, and Bob Rolance, the vice president of publicity at Atlantic, liked me and liked my pictures. And I think the first gig he hired me for was taking pictures of Tommy James and the Shondells in a parking lot opening for Hubert Humphrey.
Wow.
Who was running for president at the time. And then I took pictures at the Bee Gees' 10th anniversary party, which was a surprise to all of us because the Bee Gees only came out in America like 2 years earlier. And I thought, wow, there's a 10th anniversary for this brand new band.
New to me.
But I took really good pictures at the party, and I met people, and that really started the ball rolling. And it just kind of snowballed. Every time I took pictures, I'd meet more people, and I'd get hired for more jobs. And eventually, here I am today.
Wow.
It's just really one thing led to another, but a lot of it was being in the right place at the right time, which is why I titled my book "Right Place, Right Time."
Absolutely.
It's really the story of my life. It was kind of following your feelings. It's hard to say intuition, but it's just kind of follow what you feel you need to do, in a sense. You just have an inner voice, and if you follow that, you often end up in the right place, or I did anyway.
So true. It's incredible to watch, and we'll definitely leave a link for all your books and all your work in the description below for all of our viewers to go purchase. I'm curious, in terms of shooting people, what are your favorite types of shots to do? Is it the candid shot? Is it the portrait? And how often would maybe one of those sort of be mistaken for the other? Like, let's say that something looks candid, but it was actually posed. Does that happen with you?
Well, I don't have a favorite way of taking a picture. I don't do a lot of pre-planning, hardly any. I usually just show up with my camera bag and say, well, what's going on here? What's a good background? Why don't you stand over there? Look at me. Let's have a conversation and try to, suss out a person's personality in a few minutes of a conversation and then try to capture that in the picture. So live shooting is exciting. A lot of people like to have music playing in the background when they work, but I like to have it in the foreground.
Yeah, seriously.
And I actually heard a phrase recently that music is what feelings sound like.
I like that.
And I always tried to capture the feeling and the passion of what's going on. It wasn't enough for me just to get a shot of somebody so you could show how they're standing or what shirt they're wearing or something. I try to get a passion and feeling. And a lot of people have told me if they turn a page in a magazine and they see a picture, if it grabs them, they often realize it's one of mine because you get the feeling of what's going on. And a lot of people have said that looking at my pictures, they feel like they're there.
Absolutely.
And that always makes me feel good. That means I got it right. Because I just want a picture to show more than the facts. I like them to show the feeling.
So it's a lot about the moment before the picture and sort of what's leading up to that moment, if that's fair.
Yes. Anticipation, and you kind of have to anticipate what's going to happen because you can't see something and then take a picture of it because it's already happened. So you have to kind of see somebody going. And since I enjoy the music, I know that in a minute there's going to be that moment. And you have to get in the right angle where the light is in the right place and you get the right lens to capture the right thing. And if you do that quick enough, you get that moment. And that moment for me is the moment, you see, because for me, rock and roll is about freedom. It's about the freedom to express your feelings very loudly in public. And that moment of everybody yelling yay and nobody thinking about paying the rent is the moment I try to capture.
Interesting. That moment where everything else disintegrates and it's just that one sort of
It's just
thing.
yay, and nobody's thinking about anything else. It's just letting your emotions free and just feeling good and open. And that to me is what the rock and roll is all about. That's why it's traveled around the world, because people like that feeling.
No question. I mean, one of the best, it makes me curious. One of the big, I think, debates about rock shows nowadays is everybody has a camera, everybody's filming. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Everybody having a camera.
Well, I always enjoyed taking pictures. And one of the things that was very interesting about Polaroids is that you take a picture and immediately everybody wants to look at it. And one of the kind of popular pictures was everybody looking at the Polaroid picture.
Right.
And, that moment of revealing what split second was captured, what's your expression, were your eyes open, and nowadays it's so easy with the phone that everybody just takes a picture. I mean, I see 8-year-olds to 80-year-olds that would never have picked up a camera that used to be a mechanical machine that you would have to understand about setting the exposure, setting the focus, making it sharp, getting the speed right compared to the speed of the film. There's a lot of mathematics involved, and it was very complicated. So once that was all computerized, and nowadays a new camera is software. Because basically a camera is a lens and a sensor. And so the only thing they improve is the software of the sensor.
Right.
Which has been improved so dramatically in 20 years since. Because it wasn't only around 2000 that they were making a big enough file that you could reproduce it.
Okay.
The very early digital cameras, we had a couple. There was an Apple Instamatic kind of box that I had in like 95. It would take 12 pictures at I think each picture was like less than a megabyte.
Wow.
800 kilobytes or something. It was like very small files.
Just 12 of them.
And 12 of them. And that filled up the memory.
Wow.
We had to go download it and start again. And that wasn't quality enough to reproduce in a magazine.
Right.
But then in 2000, when Canon came out with a camera that was high enough quality, the first time I did it, the Rolling Stones had a press conference. And I went and I photographed it with a film, as I always did. And then also with the digital camera. And I came back from the press conference, I dropped the chip off with my agency, and I went down the block and dropped the film at the lab. And then the next day, my assistant came in, and then I got home 20 minutes later, the chip had been downloaded and was on the internet.
Oh, wow.
By the time, within 20 minutes, they were already showing the pictures around the world. So the next morning, my assistant said, had the slides come out? And I was like, oh, yeah, we better pick them up. And I had kind of forgotten to even pick them up because the job was done.
Right.
Because the pictures were already out. Ordinarily, we'd have to pick up the slides and then make dupes and then mail the dupes out to people around the world. This way, in 20 minutes, people in Australia to Austria were all looking at the same pictures. So after that, I started doing more digital. I think the second job was Ryan Adams needed some pictures. And Ryan has the attention span of a flea. So we were on and off about this session for a while. And I like Ryan a lot. He's a very good guy. And he makes 6 albums a week. I mean, the guy's really prolific,
Insane,
and,
yeah.
Anyway, they needed a picture, and they wanted a picture of him in the recording studio. And we've been putting it off. But finally, it was the day it was going to happen. And his manager called up and said, we're going to need these pictures right away up at Rolling Stone. They need them by tomorrow morning. And we had canceled the session 4 times already. So I said to the girl, I said, well, first he's got to show up for the session.
That's part one.
And if we take the pictures, I'll see how quick I can get them out. But normally there was no way you could take pictures one night and have them in an office the next morning.
Right.
I mean, you at least had to have the color film developed overnight. And then the next afternoon you could get it. And then if I sent originals, it would still be a whole day later. As it turned out, I shot a lot of digital pictures that night. When we were done, Ryan actually looked them over on the computer with me and picked out the ones he liked. And when he left to get in the taxi, I emailed him up to Rolling Stone. And before he was in the cab, the job was done. And Rolling
Just
Stone
like
had
that.
the pictures that night finished. So
Perfect.
that made it really convenient, and it eliminated, messengers and dupe slides and, the whole thing. It just got so easy to just take a picture and click a couple of times and send it anywhere in the world. It was pretty amazing change. Except once in a while, like somebody called, we want old school. Like I remember one time Billie Joe for Green Day, they said, we wanted you to shoot and film old school style. And I said, I went to that old school.
Yeah, I want to go to the new school.
And Billy wrote back, drop out.
Drop out. So you
said,
guys did a shoot on top of the Empire State, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, actually, the way it worked out, it was kind of complicated because they were playing in Los Angeles, and I was flying out there to give a talk, and he wanted to film, and I had to go and find film and get my old film cameras out. And I was all ready to go Sunday night. I was flying out Monday morning, and actually, I think I was going to have Monday morning, and that was the night that Billie Joe had kind of a breakdown on the
award show,
the radio awards show, where he flipped out that they cut his time and decided it was time to go to rehab. And so unfortunately the show for the next couple of days was canceled.
Right.
So but luckily I found out in time just before I was going to go to the airport, and I could take all the film cameras out of the bag. But there was an ad agency that wanted old school film style, and they had a bunch of new executives, and they wanted to look like a rock and roll band hanging out in a bar. And so I said, we would do it, and we kind of talked about it, and they were all ad execs, advertising guys who wear suits and ties all day, and they didn't know how to dress down.
Oh, right.
And ended up saying, well, we're rock and rollers who are dressed for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame dinner.
Yeah,
like we're going to wear a really bright tie today, and that's going to be wild.
Yeah, maybe some crazy socks.
And they didn't look like a rock band at all. They looked like a bunch of advertising guys hanging out in a bar. But we did a whole bunch of pictures, and my friend Jesse Mallon, who runs a couple of bars on the East Side, he let me use the bar. And afterwards, I showed him the pictures, and he was looking at the pictures, and he goes, "That's just something about it. There's a different quality. Like, how did you get that? It kind of looks like film." I said, all right, you got me. It is film. There is a difference between how film relates to digital. It's kind of like the way you see a movie that's been shot on video instead of film. There's a flatness to the digital that you don't have in film. But there's also a balance nowadays. The new cameras, the new iPhone cameras are amazing. What the algorithm does, how it balances the light between the bright and the dark, and it does it for you. Like in the old days, that was a really difficult thing because film is sensitive at an exact certain point to an exact amount of light. But the digital cameras can adjust automatically and take a brighter area and a darker area and blend it so it comes out right. I don't know how it does it. I just took some pictures last Friday. There's a documentary film about Kiss, and they showed the film at the Tribeca Festival. And afterwards, Kiss came out and did a short set. And I was down in front, and I was taking pictures with my iPhone, and you can see the pictures on my Instagram account.
Right.
They're as good or better than the pictures I took with my big camera.
Wow.
I was amazed at how sharp and clear, how perfectly focused, how perfectly exposed with the cell phone.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I mean,
so it is, and they still call it a phone, although a lot of people don't answer. I'm an old guy. I call people up. I want to talk. I don't want to type.
Yeah, they like to text.
I want all 5 sentences at once.
Seriously, not in the little deliveries here. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, and give me the answer, and I'll answer that and tell you whether I like it or not. So it's kind of awkward for me, not to be able to make a phone call, but they still call it a phone, but it's a very sophisticated camera. Not to mention all the other apps. I can deposit a check. I can check the weather. I mean, the phone is just amazing nowadays.
It's the best, I am
Especially
curious.
since nobody uses it as a phone.
Yeah. When they the rare occasion, of course. You mentioned the Tribeca thing. How was Kiss live, and sort of how was that event?
It was my first post-COVID event. Out of the house in a crowd without masks.
Right.
New York is pretty liberal now. Most people are vaccinated, and most people are starting to feel pretty safe. It's the kind of thing where we do it and then say, "Oh God, I hope that was okay."
Right. Exactly.
I'm in a crowd. Am I going to is this going to kill me?
Right.
But it was really fun to see real rock and roll, loud and in your face. How I want to rock and roll all night, party every day.
Yeah.
You know, Kiss anthems. And it was great to hear them and great to see them live. And tomorrow night actually is Blondie with the same kind of deal. They have a Tribeca film and they're going to play as well.
Wow,
so
that's amazing. And you did some of my favorite pictures with Kiss, which is a lot of their walking around Candid stuff, right? Like in New York, telephone booths. Maybe you could tell me something about that.
Well, not the telephone booth, but there's one where they're running into a phone booth like Superman and pulling off the suits, and then they're coming out the other side as Kiss. Well, that came about, that set of pictures. I did a lot of work with Kiss, and actually I'm one of the few people who has a number of pictures of Kiss outside of this, off stage, for one thing, and also in different clothes besides their super Kiss outfit.
Right.
I have them in Japan in kimonos. I actually have Gene twice. I did a cover for a Japanese magazine a few years ago where he put on a kimono again with a sword.
Wow.
But the Dress to Kill pictures came about because Cream magazine had an idea for a photo novella, which is a story like a comic book story in pictures, but in photographs.
Right.
And they kind of wrote the script where Kiss is like in their secret identity in suits, going to work, and they read the newspaper and they find out that there's a concert. They were referring to John Denver, but they cleverly disguised it as John Cleveland. and they felt that the world was being destroyed by boring music and that they had to save the world with rock and roll. So they run into the phone booth and pull up their suits and they run out as Kiss, and they put up a bunch of posters for a fake John Cleveland concert, and everybody shows up, but instead of John Cleveland, Kiss comes out and saves the world with rock and roll. And at the end, they get metal pinned on their chest and they have an orgy backstage to celebrate. And it was all done on the fly. When they came over to Peter talks about it in the thing. He said that they raided Bill Coyne, who was their manager. He had some suits. So he and Peter actually got suits. I think Peter had a suit.
Okay. He was the older one.
Yeah. And Paul said that he had to borrow it from Bill. Ace and Gene are wearing my suits because they showed up. They didn't get the memo or whatever. They showed up without suits. It worked out better because if you see Gene in the picture, he pushes up the sleeves a little, but Gene is three sizes bigger than I am. He's a tall guy, actually.
He is.
Although his son makes him look like a little old man.
Yes, his son is
he's a very big guy. And so in my suit, he looks like the Hulk because he's like literally busting out of the suit. Like his arms and his legs are like a foot longer than the suit.
Oh,
and he's wearing my wife's clogs, which look like hoofs on him.
The shoes. Oh my God.
Yeah, it is my wife's clogs. So
that is hilarious.
It was very spontaneous. We were in the subway when we came out. We took a picture on the corner. That just like a spur of the moment on the corner of 8th Avenue and 23rd Street, which all the Kiss fans come back as a pilgrimage to take a picture of themselves on. They all know what corner it was.
Totally.
They all go there, and then it actually came out in the magazine first in January when the band was in the studio recording the album. And they liked the look so much that they decided then to call it Dress to Kill and use that picture. Oh. And then I had to bring the suits back, and they all got dressed up again in Electric Ladyland. And we took a series of pictures of Ace at the piano and them at the microphone and at the recording panel to make it look as if they were always in that outfit. And that they recorded the album in those suits. And the cover actually won awards for the design.
Wow.
Because the name is not actually printed, it's embossed in a black border around the picture. It's the Kiss logo's embossed on the thing, and it won a lot of design awards. And it's one of the most well-known Kiss photos out there.
It is. It's so well known and so iconic, you know. I mean,
and it's just funny, you know.
It's hilarious. I mean, do you ever walk by somebody? I mean, you must in a Dress to Kill shirt, and like, what do you think?
Oh, I like it when people inspired or they like my shirts. So the John Lennon New York City T-shirt is actually reproduced a lot more than the Kiss shirt.
Yeah.
And I see people all over the world wearing a shirt with the picture of John wearing the New York City shirt. And actually, it was kind of funny. I got a great line, and what a great answer. Yoko Ono was doing a show one time, And a reporter said to her, the picture of John wearing the New York City t-shirt is so popular that people are wearing a t-shirt of that picture.
The guy wearing a t-shirt.
And they said to Yoko, what do you think about that? And Yoko said, I don't think about that. I think about my work. And that is the best answer. I love that. I've used that answer a lot of times when people ask me, what do you think about something? I said, I don't think about that.
I don't think
about my work. That's what an artist is supposed to do. You're not supposed to think about other things. You're supposed to think about your work and just keep making the work.
That's a fascinating response. Yoko Ono, somebody who, would it be fair to say, is pretty misunderstood generally? I feel like there's a lot to her,
Well, Yoko, if you look into what she's done, all of her artwork, all of her statements, all of her life has been dedicated to peace and communication. When she did her cut piece, she became famous in the 60s, and we once saw her do it when she redid it in Paris. She sits on a stage all alone, wearing a dress and inviting members of the audience to come up one at a time and pick up a large pair of cloth shears. It's not a small scissors or anything. It's like a foot long scissors, right. And to come up and approach her and to cut off a piece of her clothes.
Wow.
Which is a very personal, a very dangerous, and to invite strangers to come at you with these double knife and really physically take off a piece of your clothing. And there's no music playing when it happens. It's deadly silent. It's extremely stressful because you have no idea what each person is going to do. And yet, if you're going to trust people, if there's going to be peace in the world, we must trust people. And it takes that kind of trust to have peace in the world. And when you realize how dangerous it is, you realize how difficult it is to have peace in the world. And that Yoko is willing to open herself up to that, to strangers doing that, shows how committed she is to making that statement about peace.
Yeah,
it's very impressive. And all of her work has been about peace and communication. And so, like many other people who preach for peace, from Jesus to Gandhi, she's been attacked. I don't know why people attack people who ask for peace. But they seem to get very violent about it.
Yeah, well, it's a horrible thing, I mean.
But anything that Yoko's ever said or read or done has been just totally generous and giving, and always based. When John and Yoko got married, they didn't plan to have a bed-in. They planned to have a honeymoon like normal people. And the more they were thinking about where they could go to have a secret honeymoon, just the two of them together, the more they realized that they were so famous that it was practically impossible. The more they tried to hide, the more the English press would try to find them.
Right.
And the more secluded they were, the more valuable a picture of them would be. And so they realized there was practically nowhere that they could go unless they spent all their time trying to preserve this almost impossible privacy. And so Yoko got the idea to turn it around and said, well, what's the most valuable picture? A picture of us in bed, right? So let's invite all the world press to come in and take a picture of us in bed on our honeymoon, but we put the word peace behind us. So every newspaper in the world would have to carry the word peace on the front page.
Wow.
And that was the point of the piece, the beddings.
Right. So that at least they can get their message out.
Yeah. And yet, there's a lot of racism involved. There was still a lot of anti-Japanese feeling in England or around the world at that point. The other Beatles had gone for the blonde model look. John went for an interesting, not blonde at all, kind of oddball artist. I'm actually one of the few people in the world who heard about Yoko before I heard about the Beatles.
Really?
The Beatles came out here in America in the winter of 64.
Okay.
But in the summer of 73, I read a magazine that was put out by Paul Krasner, a magazine called The Realist, which was basically an art political satire magazine. But they had an article in there about a Japanese woman who had rented a loft on Canal Street. And she had a lot of large black bags in there. And you could pay $5 to go into the loft. And back when $5 was more than it is today.
Okay, yeah.
But not more than $25 anyway. But you pay $5 to go in the loft, and you could get in a bag, or you could get in a bag with somebody, and you could do your thing, in the language back then. Or you didn't have to get in a bag. You could come in and just watch the bags and wonder what people were doing in there.
Wow.
And that, to me, seemed like the strangest thing I had ever heard of, called art.
That is very strange.
And then there it was, 4 or 5 years later, there's John Lennon with this strange Japanese woman inside a black bag. And I thought, well, there's not two of them.
Wow. Holy smoke. So she was really active on the scene before the Beatles even.
Yes. Yeah. Well, John met her at her one-woman art show at the Digitial Gallery in England. And John, what's his name? I'm going a little blank. Anyway, the gallery owner knew the Beatles. He was kind of a hip guy. He knew the Beatles and the Stones. And he was the guy who said, John, I'd like to meet my friend Yoko Ono. And it was very unusual at that time, but still not that great for a woman to have a one-person show in galleries. But especially back then in the 60s, for a woman to have her own show was a big deal. So she was quite a name in the avant-garde world.
Yes.
But that is is way out of the mainstream.
Yeah.
It had to do, for instance, with destructive art, where people would smash a piano or smash a vase or something, and to relate the feeling of destruction. And Yoko she told me one time she couldn't afford a piano or a vase or something to break. So she was in a destructive art show, and what she did was play the telephone game, where a person whispers something to somebody else, and then they whisper it to the next person.
Right.
And she went through a whole audience of 500 people, and they're whispering back and forth, all the way around. And it finally comes back to the last person coming up on stage, and is about to say what they heard, and then everybody hears how different it is from what they thought they heard.
Right.
And Yoko put up her hand and said, "I don't want to hear it." And she smashed and broke communication.
Oh, wow.
So rather than everybody watching somebody break an object, Yoko personally affected each person in the room by breaking their communication.
That's wild. Wowee.
So it cost nothing, and it was more effective than anything else anybody did.
Man, and it's intangible. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of humor in Yoko's work that people don't know about. When John wrote, when he was doing interviews, he talked about Yoko. I think it's in an interview or one of her book forwards, where he said Yoko Ono is the most famous unknown artist in the world. Everybody knows who she is and nobody knows what she does.
Wow. That is.
Although in the last 20 years, she's had exhibitions around the world. She's always got 2 or 3 exhibitions going on in museums around the world nowadays, because she's become much more popular. The younger generations who didn't care who broke up the Beatles seem to like her art. They seem to understand what she's saying. And she didn't break up the Beatles. The Beatles
you don't give her that title.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, if you ask the Beatles, they've all said no. It had to do with us as guys, that we reached the end of our working time together.
Even Paul said that.
Paul said it. George said it. Ringo said it a couple of times.
It's so true.
They don't care if John says it, but
yeah. No, it's true. Do you think John was bigger during his lifetime, or do you feel like John is bigger now? Because that's something that I struggle to grasp.
I think he's always been as big as he was, but didn't know it. It wasn't as obvious. When the outpouring, after he died, the outpouring around the world, it was so emotional and so big and so immediate. I remember thinking, I wish he knew how many people cared about him, because, the newspapers used to make fun of him. And, he wasn't given the respect he was after he died, when people realized what they lost. But I think that's because he was always that popular. It's just people never needed to express it.
They didn't really feel the need to say it, maybe because it was happening right in front of them. And
right. He was always there,
Yeah.
And so there was no reason to make a point of, him being standing out as that special. But people were always aware of what he was doing. I certainly was. I remember the first time I went to photograph him, that I was actually going to meet him, I was shaking, I was trembling. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to meet John Lennon and Yoko Ono. They were not only the most famous people in the world, I was a huge fan of what they were doing. They did things like, it was all conceptual. They mailed an acorn to the leaders of every country in the world. to plant so that the world could grow together in peace. Now that's kind of ludicrous, but at the same time, it puts the concept into people's minds. And John once said that we'll be the Marx Brothers for peace. That if you look at the news every night, the first story is usually about the president or some world breaking news, and then there's some more local news, and then there's something else. But and you can't break into that. That's set. That's what the world news is. But the end of the news is always a human interest story.
Yeah.
And if you do something funny, you can get in there. Like Abby Hoffman threw money onto the floor of the stock exchange.
Okay.
And he got on the news, or they ran a pig for president, that kind of thing. And so John and Yoko mailed acorns to everybody, every leader in the world, so that they would put a story about peace in the news. And they did all kinds of events like that just to get the word peace over and over. All they're saying is give peace a chance. John once told me that he said that a company had asked him to advertise for toothpaste. He said, I can't tell people what toothpaste to buy. They're not going to believe me and buy this toothpaste.
Yeah.
He said, I have a talent. He said that he had a talent for summing up what people are already thinking and giving them a simple way to express it. Like
Absolutely.
All we were saying is give peace a chance. It's not a unique new idea. It's just a very simple way to express an idea that everybody already had.
And how timely is that music now? I mean,
it still matters.
It's unbelievable. I
mean, so many of his songs resonate, and as personal as they were, they're universal because he was talking about personal experiences, but relating them in a very universal way that people could understand and express. It gave them the words to express themselves.
Absolutely. I know that we've gone on for a little while, but one of the last things I really want to know is, what, and if it's the peace content, then, by all means we can use that, but what do you really think of when you think of John? Is there a special moment that you think of, or is it just a lot of different moments?
There's a lot of different moments, and I do think of all the good moments. It was very hard to get used to the way he died. It was so senseless, so painful. But it's like when you get a deep cut, it really hurts. But eventually the cut will heal, but there'll be a scar. And when you touch that scar, you feel that pain again. And it's kind of like that. It just was so senseless. It really shook me because there was no rhyme or reason for that to happen. And he was in such a good place at the time. 2 days earlier, on the Friday night, Saturday morning, I sat on the floor in the recording studio, and he was very happy that the album was getting accepted. He hadn't had an album out in 5 years since he was with Sean, but it was getting great reviews. It was rising in the charts. He was planning a world tour. We were talking about where we were going to go shopping in Tokyo and what we were going to eat in Paris. Wow. And 2 days later, he was dead. It was just the worst shock I ever got. And for no reason. He didn't get sick. It wasn't an accident, I mean, over the years, I'm kind of old. I've lost a lot of friends, but not like that.
Right. That makes it a different thing.
Yeah, it was horribly different. And so pointless. But yes, the fact that so many people immediately expressed a personal loss. I don't think he realized how many people he affected in that way, and that's such a personal way.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And Bob, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me because, this conversations like this is what keeps the memory alive for a guy, in my shoes here. And I really value everything you've done and that they've contributed. Well,
he was a very real person, and I do miss the personal jokes. He always kept everybody laughing. But it was always very timely. Like he would make a pun. He would make a phrase about what was going on. He was extremely perceptive. He could call people out in a way that would be insulting if somebody else said it, but then he would twist the end of it into a pun, and it was funny, and everybody would laugh, even though it was really true.
Right.
Everybody would have a laugh, and it wouldn't hurt anybody. He had a real talent for doing that, and I don't remember a single one of those jokes because it was all just so spur of the moment, and it was all so fast.
But the moments were there.
I just remember always having a good time and always laughing and always learning something.
Yes.
And the fact that he ate well and he became a good cook. He learned about macrobiotic diet and he learned about cooking when he was taking care of Sean. He became a pretty good cook. People don't know that. Yoko Ono is actually a very good cook.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really cool to know, actually. So they would make, just meats and just regular stuff.
Low on the meat, high on the vegetables and fish. Macrobiotic diet is more about grains, and a balanced diet. It doesn't eliminate meat, but it's more about balancing the diet and eating foods that are you can digest and live with. If you have a macrobiotic meal, you just feel lighter and better than if you eat a hamburger or something.
I might have to look into that. Listen, Bob, thank you so much.
There's a book called "You Are All Sampaku."
Okay, You Are All Sampaku.
Yeah, and that's the best. That's a book that John gave me and a number of his friends after he learned about it from Gloria Swanson, whose husband wrote the book. And that book is a very good way to explains the macro diet and how to transition from a Western diet to a macro diet. It's a difficult diet to keep up in a Western world because there's butter and all kinds of things in normal food that you wouldn't want in a macrobiotic diet. So I ended up kind of learning a lot from that, but then ending up with a more balanced diet that I can still travel and eat what they have wherever I go.
Right.
But I tend to lean towards a healthier diet ever since I learned about that.
Interesting. Wow. Well, there's so much stuff that people, I think, can find out even from this conversation that they probably didn't know. So thank you so much.
Well, read my book.
Absolutely.
Right place, right time. I think I do mention that in here. And a lot of other great stories, traveling with the Clash and the Sex Pistols and, Sid Vicious stealing my boots and a lot of great stories.
There's, I'm sure, a million stories and great stuff that people will want to hear.
Yeah.
Awesome, Bob. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for calling.
Wow, guys. I mean, what can I say about Bob Gruen? What a
Blast
guest.
from the past, that.
Intense.
Wow. I like the part where he humanizes these people that he worked with, right? Everyone thinks, oh, John Lennon, oh, all these big names, like what must they be like? And he knows that John Lennon was a great chef in his house.
Yeah,
and cooked great
that's
meals.
what I love about it. That's what I loved about it. That's the stuff we don't do. We put these people on a pedestal, but they have to cook supper for their kids. Like Pop Evil, right? He said, I still got to put meals on my table and stuff. And I loved also like the Acorn, that idea of promoting peace, but in a peaceful way, in the sense of like, well, everybody wants to take a picture of us. Well, we're gonna have a bed in, and then you have no choice but to have that on the front cover of the newspaper. Genius move.
Totally.
That's good, man. Good interview, Cassius.
Appreciate that.
The fact that he spoke about Yoko Ono, right? Because everybody loves to hate Yoko Ono. I don't know her, but I grew up I know who she is, and I've heard some of her stuff, and I haven't been the same since because it's a bit out there. But but all that to say that, like, yeah, even they said she didn't break up the Beatles, man. You know what I mean? It was going to happen and all that stuff, and like how avant-garde she really was, man. I saw your reaction on that, and I was really impressed. I'm like, wow, yeah, it's true, man. Like the fact that she didn't have money to destroy something, right? So she decided, let me destroy somebody's conversations. And like, then she affected everybody in the room. Man, come on.
That was probably my favorite part of the interview because, like, the thing is, being like all of us, like, we weren't really around. Like, we weren't around when the Beatles were at the top of their hype. So it's like, you can only catch what the mainstream documentaries give you. And I guess if you were really to delve into books, but I haven't really got there yet. So I really knew next to nothing about Yoko Ono. And I found it really, really fascinating to find out, like, who is this woman? And I get, like, she did have a life before the Beatles, and there had to be a reason why they met. So I'd never thought about it because, like you say, Frank, like, we just put them on a pedestal and it's like we don't question them almost.
Yeah, and the fact that he mentioned even like the whole Japan thing, people were still a bit angry about that kind of thing. So yeah, she had it. And
that was a big motivation for them to leave the UK. Like that's, and so this is crazy stuff. And look, I mean, when Bob, I wanted to ask him more about John and Yoko, but I could see that it did touch him in that moment, and he also said it's like a scar that never fully heals, especially when you touch it type of thing. So I didn't want to push that, but I'm very thankful that he did it. And like I told him on the interview, this is the stuff that keeps their memories alive, because like, again, we weren't there. So this is the closest we will get to having a conversation with John Lennon, you know?
Yeah,
True.
So it's a massive honor to have Bob, and we're going to keep the train rolling right along, because we keep these episodes jam-packed. We have a number of special guests. Joe, if you want to maybe give them a quick intro.
Yeah, we have a Canadian band from Winnipeg, Why, who reached out to us when they saw the...
Why did they reach out to us, or is that... No.
Why? That's what they're called. Why band? Why? I'm not sure. But no, a great bunch of guys. They reached out to us when they saw the Lanois show, and became instant fans of the show. And like, we had a great conversation with Cassius and I with the band. And, you know, they it's good. Like, you know, the way I pegged it was like, they sound to me, U2 meets, what's that other, The Cult. You know,
yes,
I find
absolutely.
That like reckless rock and roll vibe where the front man is like, you know, giving it his all, and like you have that U2 backing band almost, you know. I don't know. That's well my takeaways from that. Yeah.
Totally. No, so many different types of sounds in their work, and really a great group of guys. Really appreciate their feedback on everything we've been doing, and we hope you enjoy them. So we're gonna hop into this interview, and then we'll be back to say goodbye here on SoundMojo. We're back on Innersleeve, joined once again with a panel of very special guests. The Canadian group Why, which is a fantastic group. We have Dave, Brian, and Jeremy. Gentlemen, what's going on?
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, indeed. Listen, we really appreciate having you guys on. So, Brian, I don't know if you wanted to give people maybe a little bit of description about Why and maybe how we got in touch, but there's a bit of a backstory now.
I'm not really sure. I was fanboying over the show, and I think I was first introduced to you guys with the Daniel Lenoir interview, and being a fan. I know Jeremy's a huge fan of Lenoir, probably even more so than I am, and just kind of thought, I gotta let these guys know this show's awesome, and I was blown away just by the interviewing. And we've done a lot of radio interviews, and sometimes it's just someone reading your bio to you. Like, I know, right. we wrote it.
Yeah, seriously. But is this Wikipedia entry true?
Is this true? Yeah, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of Chris Farley interview stuff. Yeah, but you guys, it felt like music journalism, and you don't see a lot of that anymore. Not since, like people like Alan Cross, or So it's kind of nice to see that it's still alive. There's proper music journalism going on right now.
What we like to keep on the show is more like very straightforward conversations. It's not like you're just saying, we're not just going to read your bio. We're just like, hey man, like, how's life? How's it going? What's it like to be a musician today? It's like, it's not an easy game,
No,
so
exactly.
I know you guys have, so let us know what it's like. What's it like from Winnipeg? Are there unique challenges of Winnipeg compared to any other city for playing like rock music, touring, the whole music scene?
Well, right now it is.
So, right. I guess
so a whole lot of streaming right now. So
pretty level playing ground at the moment. It's not really dependent on where you are. Did you find the same, Jeremy?
Yeah. It's not much going on right now.
So how about before? Maybe take us to the height of the Winnipeg scene right before the pandemic. If each of you could maybe give us a snapshot.
A lot going on.
Okay, so the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great music scene here, and we had just released our album, Despite All the Darkness, and we started rehearsing to do shows, and we were planning on, we're going to go here, we're going to go there, and then everything just stopped, and we had to start looking at ways to use our rehearsal space in another way, and so we've been continuing to rehearse. We just started to do streaming, and we did it on YouTube and Facebook and everything else, and now we're looking into Twitch to see what we can do there. So,
okay,
but, yeah.
How's it like? What's the reaction like? Is it like positive, or is it just something that's holding you over until you get into the real world again and like start touring?
It feels like we're creating and we're performing. It doesn't feel the same as having an audience in front of you, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
this is true. Dave, what are your thoughts on sort of the streaming aspects of concerts? Are you a fan?
I much prefer being with people. So, I mean, it holds us over until we can do that. But when you're just playing in front of people, you're not worried about cameras or if you have enough bandwidth or like any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So there's some challenges that certainly come with trying to stream that you don't necessarily deal with when you're, just playing in front of people. So I mean, I prefer playing in front of people, obviously, but you do what you can.
Yeah, it's true. You can only tap into so much, especially when you're trying to keep it going. Did you guys waiting it out ever and saying, okay, we're just going to wait till concerts come back and not do the streams, or was that ever a conversation?
No, I just us rehearsing together. It feels healthy. It feels like we're being creative. We're still writing, even in these rehearsal sessions. We've been writing songs too, so we're still building a catalog.
Right.
But yeah, I think we need that camaraderie. We need to get together, and there's something about going to a concert. Even myself, I can watch a lot of these Radiohead concerts been posting on YouTube, but it's not the same as being in the room with live music.
Yeah,
I think there's something that happens to your DNA. The atoms in the room change when live music is actually being performed in the same space as the audience, and you feel that back and forth. So that's what we're really hungry to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's nice to connect with people.
That's it. Yeah, concerts and shows, like it's you feel the music, right? Like, like when you can't sometimes listen to like AC/DC or rock in general, there has to be like a perfect peak volume where it's like, now you're feeling it. I
gotta feel the music.
That's it. You got to feel the music. So that's what it is about live. That's the magic. Yeah. That's what we're all missing.
It's insane. We actually brought up those those Radiohead concerts yesterday on the podcast. And I don't know about you guys, but that was one of my favorite sequences of like a studio concert, because I found that they really managed to make it as close to it as they could. It wasn't quite there, but it was pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they've also been posting older concerts too from their past years, which is nice to kind of see those shows. So you get to see them playing in Europe, so it's a full shot show. It's just not the same as being there watching it, and I'm sure it's not the same for them either. So
how did you guys all meet exactly? Are you guys all born and raised in Winnipeg?
Yep.
Born and raised?
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
I was born in Saskatoon, but I don't bring it up because of I don't want to be shamed or attacked. Yeah.
So, traitor here. No.
Hey, go Bombers, go! Okay.
Dave, always in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I grew up in Winnipeg since I was born here, so I've experienced most of Winnipeg in all of its glory. Where are you guys from? That I don't have a reference to what Winnipeg is like, how to describe it to everyone else, because Winnipeg is, to some people it's a big city, to other people we're not that big. So, but yeah, I've lived in Winnipeg my whole life and spent some time in Saskatoon. But I think Brian and I met. I guess it's probably about
2010.
Yeah.
About 2010?
Yeah. A little over 10 years ago. And they were looking for a drummer. And so we kind of approached each other and it kind of just worked.
It was weird because the meeting we had, I was talking to you and I said, yeah, we're looking for a drummer. This kind of music we're doing, we're looking for something we don't want you to just play rhythm. We want you not just to play a beat to keep time. We want you to create your own signature sounds. He goes, okay, cool. And I said, well, come to rehearsal, you're in. And he goes, you haven't heard me yet. I said, I know, but I have a feeling. And it was right. It was right. Yeah. And to be clear, I've been in Winnipeg most of my life. So I got you. Well, yeah, I got here like just out of high school. So
go ahead, Joe.
So I was just gonna say, like, how do you guys like write? What's the normal writing process for you guys? Because I noticed like on the live streams you guys were putting, you have a nice, like, is that your rehearsal space studio kind of vibe?
Yeah.
That's a nice room. Like it must
very
be so
nice.
Inspiring to hear the drums in that room. You really get a beautiful sound to it. And it's inspiring to write right off the floor, right?
Yeah.
So are you guys like set up to record and capture when you guys rehearse or write?
We started writing in a little studio setting, but this is much better now, right? Like to be able to write in an open room.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we were in most of the songs on the album, they were all written like in a pretty small, like vocal was it a vocal room or whatever?
Yeah, it's a little vocal room. We could record everything. Yeah,
pretty small, and where we would just record the demos, and most of it was just you and me, Brian, right? So
yeah. Well, then Dave would come in and he'd have ideas. So
yeah.
I hear a lot of the U2, Daniel Lanois inspirations, but I also got a bit of like the Cult, right, from that aggressive rock vibe. Am I off?
I've never really listened to much Cult, but I guess so. I'm really into Muse. I like Muse a lot, and Manchester Orchestra. Yeah.
And musically, we're kind of all over the place, like individual tastes as far as music goes. So I think bringing all of that together, we kind of get. I agree, like with the Cult, you hear little smatterings of that. I think our tastes are so eclectic, individually, that when we bring it all together, we kind of get something that's somewhat a little bit unique.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
there's a lot to sort of hear in you guys' music, and we mentioned the Daniel Lanois. I mean, Jeremy, I know that you're said to be a huge fan of him. I don't know if that's influenced your music directly at all or indirectly.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. I mean, I know Brian said I was probably a bigger fan than him.
Well,
but
you're always playing his stuff. Yeah, you're always playing his music.
That's just more recently. Like
he's in the circulation.
I kind of just only recently started listening to some of his back catalog, but I knew of him. And I had heard, whatever songs that were out there on the radio. But I would say more of my influences were U2, I think, and later on Coldplay. But I would say a lot of my specific like guitar influences is from The Edge. I think I was a big fan of what he does with effects and stuff. So.
Who isn't?
Seriously,
I do hear Killers in there too, though. I do hear some Killers in his style of playing too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I became a big Killers fan along the way, and Mute Math. I love them.
Oh my God, yes.
I don't know
that. It's not often I run into somebody who says that. Mute Math.
They're one of my favorites.
Band.
Oh, yeah, man. Yes.
What I love about those guys is you never know what the next album's going to sound like. Every album is a complete treat. And then, I unfortunately never got to see them live. I think came maybe 2006, 7. I started to get into them. And when I would see those, back then YouTube was just starting out, so you would get really crappy footage, but I would see their live performances and just how nuts they are, even just their videos, right? They switch instruments, they're playing all in real time. A guitar player will run over to the drums, play drums. It's
wow. Yeah. I gotta check this out.
I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna leave this with the list as long as my arm of suggestions.
with great songs to boot, you know what I mean? That's what it is. It's really incredible.
Wow.
Underrated.
I think the thing that we do when we're trying to write a song is I think we're trying to be as present as possible and trying to be as honest as possible and as vulnerable as possible. Because we don't go in with an agenda. We go in going, Jeremy will start playing something and I think it's noodling and I go, what is that? And he goes, I'm just warming up. No, that's a song. And he does this all the time. He'll noodle something and go, I'm just trying. I said, that's a song, guys. We're going to start recording everything he does, because otherwise we've had songs we did just recently and they're gone because what was that? I improvised something, you improvised something.
It was there and then it's gone. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Someone else is going to get it. So.
Yeah. So it'll go into someone else's telepathy in their mind.
Yeah. It's going off. Yeah.
Well, it's much easier these days because now everybody's got a phone. You could just hit the phone and record the entire jam. And back in the day, it was really hard to capture those ideas. You had to just rehearse them and nail them in your head, or else they were gone.
Or you'd phone your voicemail. Yeah.
Yeah, and then leave yourself the melody. That was the old school voice memo. Interesting. See?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
That was such a part of hip hop culture, right? Every song had to have a phone call or a dial-in or a message.
But you know what? If you forget to record, you're screwed. And we've done that. We got so wrapped up in the moment, and then I went, "Did anyone record that?"
Yeah, seriously.
Come
Be good
back
if
from
we
the
could use this.
bathroom and they're jamming, and then you go to sing something. You go, "That was great. Anyone get that?" And it's gone. So
Yeah.
Man, it's
Do you guys
insane.
often feel like it's a conduit? Like I often feel like you're just a conduit for something that's just, you know, that inspiration, that idea, that song just shows up, and next thing you know, magically 3 hours later, it's done. You know, and then there's others that you have to work at it and work at it and work at it. But when you get those moments, you're like, wow, what happened here? You know, like what, you know, that's when you were saying you're so present that you didn't think about anything else. Nothing else mattered, you know? And there's those key moments is what makes it all worth it.
It's almost like
rules.
you can't waste it because it just came to you, right? Sorry, Brian, don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's good. No, I'm just saying there's no rules. There should be no rules to go, well, is this us? Well, it's coming through us, so it's us. It doesn't matter if it's jazz, blues, you know, if it's, I mean, Dave's been experimenting with strange, you know, looping and things. and it's about what's to make the song the best it can be, and that it'll connect with people. I think the bottom line for us is we've always thought of a successful song as, charts and all that stuff's nice, but if you don't connect with somebody, if someone contacts you and goes, that song got me through something, or that song was the anthem to my recovery, or that song was something I listened to on the way home from work to kind of purge all the crap from the day, that's a successful song. That's why you start writing music, is those personal connections. It's nice to have the accolades, but it doesn't mean anything, because your legacy is the lives you've touched with those songs.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. You know, like even, you know, comparing it to episodes, we've had episodes that, you know, have done commercially better on YouTube or whatever, but the ones that really connect with me are the ones where people say, hey, you know, I really enjoyed this, or I thought this was a good point or whatever. You know, you're right. It's really about that impact. Dave, I want to gauge sort of what you listen to. I mean, we get Muse from Brian, Radiohead. Jeremy gave us his taste. Sort of. What's your listening style?
I'm all over the map. I mean, I like Johnny Cash, and I like Tremonti, and kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum there, like Gojira. You know, really crazy stuff.
Joe's got his tickets, I think.
Yeah. My first show back is gonna be Gojira Deftones.
Hey.
So I mean, I'm all over the map, and I mean, I've got young kids and a wife at home, so my you know, most of that listening happens when I'm in the truck, because no one else wants to put up with it. So.
One thing I'm curious about, just on a band perspective, how do you guys stay together? Like, it's, you know, it's been a number of years, like Brian and Dave, 10 years, 11 years. How do you guys keep the glue holding this together?
Music.
It's not that difficult because you love the music.
And I think the music is sort of how we communicate with each other. I think we talk and we have fun and we joke around, talk about stupid shows, and we'll talk about Manchester Orchestra's new album is incredible. And we'll just kind of jibber jabber and talk about stuff, and food.
Food, we talk a lot about food.
Yeah, what is? But the music kind of is the moment where it all makes sense. That's the part where I think it makes sense. Their differences in our personalities. The music, it's sort of feels like a giant metaphor for how maybe we all need to kind of just be we're all contributing our parts in this world. And if we let it work, if we let it kind of crash into each other, sometimes some beautiful things come out of it. So I think maybe that's why that works. That's the one place when you're doing music is you feel the closest to almost like a spiritual purging. There's something, it's like Quincy Jones says, the best music's when you feel God walk through the room. And it's like those moments where I think we feel something in the room and we're trying to stay out of its way. I mean, let it go through us as a filter, but like, no, restrict it to, that's not cool enough. Or, well, that's going to be embarrassing if I do that, because I have to make an awkward positioning. It's all about just getting the sound out. And I think when we come together, something wonderful happens. Even when we're tired on a rehearsal night last night, we were exhausted, but there was moments where it's like, man, that felt great. Like we did the comeback and it just felt wonderful. And our new song that we wrote actually at the rehearsal space, Callous Heart, that thing always, if I'm having a bad night, we start with that song, I'm energized afterwards. So
you're off and running.
These two guys get me amped up though. So
what do you guys think about this concept from Brian? Did you guys agree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. I mean, there's something about music that kind of transcends kind of our own experiences, whether it's through the week or just generally. It just kind of it makes uh, it makes being together easy for one thing. But I mean, not in contrast to that, but I mean, I know that if I needed, like, both Brian and Jeremy have my back. Like, and I know if I call them up and said, "Hey, my I'm broken, my car broke down here. Can I get a lift?" I know each one of these guys got my back. And so even beyond the music, there's that, but certainly the music certainly is a glue, really.
Right.
That's what I was gonna say.
Glue.
It's
Yeah.
a glue.
You feel the same way?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it's universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can connect so easily with anybody with music, and like you could be very different people, but when you find music as the glue, you go to a concert, right, with thousands of other people watching the same thing going on. Well, you all have that same thing in common, right? Even though this person right next to you you'd never hang out with them otherwise. They might be completely different sort of personality or whatever, right? Like not everybody can get along with everybody out of that setting, but music brings everyone together, right?
It makes it different. The entire environment and feeling is just completely different. It's so true. Yeah. And I mean, this is something I've been missing. I'm sure you guys probably miss it so much. I mean, being performers, right? Like I'm just an audience member. I can't imagine you guys,
Yeah. I totally miss that. Like going back to the streaming, like for me, it's super hard to tap into any energy when you're just performing to nothing. It just feels so foreign and weird to me.
It's awkward.
So it's very awkward. Yeah. So
definitely a skill.
Yes. It's almost part of that is acting, right?
Interesting.
It's almost like acting, and you can kind of feel that even from going from like stage floor monitors to in-ears. That's a different experience altogether too, because even that energy when you take your ear out, like you might have one on or one off, right? And it changes the dynamic of how the music feels, because you can feel the sound of the room rather than just straight audio going into your head. So
what do you guys tend to use? Do you guys use floor monitors or in-ears when you're on stage?
Yeah,
Jeremy's used
floor monitors.
Yeah, Dave, I use some sort of in-ear sometimes, but I'd like to use in-ear because I tend to leave the stage, and I've done like shows even at the Forks where I've gone off and it's a big stage. I've gone off into the security area because I get stupid when I'm live and I don't think, and then I go, I'm kind of hearing the mains. So sometimes I'm having to hear the mains, or the monitors aren't always there for me as a singer. So I'm trying to, kind of gauge the room and feel what they're feeling, and the monitors don't give you always a true. And I've tried in-ears. I just don't know. I think maybe I'll eventually get comfortable with them, but I don't mind a wireless mic, but I'm just not sure about the in-ears. I mean, I'm probably going to have to, because those bigger stages, it's weird. Like you're so far apart and you can't really, I don't know. It's something to think about, I guess. But maybe next step.
Man, this is such interesting stuff. I could ask you guys questions all day. I mean, it's just a wealth of information. I am curious. I know you guys are looking at doing, as obviously, I'm tired of saying this into the camera. Obviously, when things are safe and when things are open, you guys are planning to do some tour dates. What are some cities? I know you're looking at Canada, Europe. What are some cities that are Y's favorite places to perform?
Well, right now, Winnepeg, because people are awesome, but we're getting a lot of response from Ireland. So I haven't been to Ireland for a long time, and I like to go to Ireland and play. I know Dave wants to go there, and they just are a different musical culture. Like when I was there, they have music halls, they have pubs, and they have discos or disco where you go dance, you go to a pub to play pool or play games or VLTs and drink, and you go to a music hall to have a drink and watch a band. And here in Canada, we just merged it all together. So we're playing, let's say, the Pyramid, and I can hear someone on the VLT, doodly doodly, you know, on between a song. I mean, it's like just, okay, whatever, it's a thing. But to have people that focused, that they're there strictly for music, it's just it's a much more art-friendly culture, I think. I mean, not saying that Canada isn't, because we've got a great scene here, but it's just, I'm really was blown away by how different it was and their view of music. They have such a kind of a reverence for music. And maybe that's like that everywhere else, but Ireland just seemed like they really got it.
That's awesome, man. We hear about that a lot on the show, about how Europe in general is just like, it takes the music culture and appreciation to a whole nother level. It's almost unparalleled.
Right. Well, and the thing is too, when you play shows, sometimes you're going to play to a bigger crowd. Other times you're going to play, like you're opening for somebody that's got a big audience, you're playing to that bigger crowd. And then other times you're playing in front of 5 people. But I've always felt like, even if the 5 people that are there standing there watching you, they deserve the same show that the thousands of people get or the hundreds of people get. And I think it's with us too, we think all the time is that this could be our last time playing a show. Like, you don't know. Tomorrow you could be gone. Something could happen. So you don't want someone going, I saw their last show and they kind of phoned it in.
Sad but true. You never know what could happen from day to day, right?
It's a privilege. It's a privilege to create music and to play it for people. And if 2 people are interested, they deserve the best you got. And exactly. I think that's how we've always approached live, is that even 2 people listening or tuning in, whatever, they deserve the best you got. And hopefully with Twitch, we'll get a little more interaction with people, that we can kind of stop between songs and talk. That's a weird thing. It's like kind of doing a radio show and playing the music.
Right.
So you're playing the music and you're the DJ. So it's kind of a weird thing. Yeah.
I think it's worth going for, though. So when is the Twitch going to launch? Is that out now?
We set it up, and we just kind of put screen. I think we showed a couple little clips, and we just tried it out, and we're going to work out some details, and we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll start streaming some rehearsals or something. We'll see.
Very cool. Well, we'll definitely put the link to all of that in the description below for all of our viewers. If you can find why everywhere that you need to see them in the description. Joe, were you going to add something?
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, because we have to be on 17 platforms as a musicians these days, and you know, the whole time management of social and stuff. Which one has been friendliest to you guys? Like you're mentioning, you want to go on Twitch. That's going to be new, but where is the Why's biggest audience at this point? Like, what do you engage with them the most?
It's weird because Twitch, just setting up a week ago, we're getting a lot of follows. I mean, they're like 80 follows, and we haven't done anything yet. So it was like a lot of people talking to us. That's nice. Very friendly community. I think TikTok surprised me the most. That we shot up over a week or two. We went from 3 followers to over 1,000, and people were just looking at a clip of a song, which doesn't give you enough. But I don't know. I think it's weird. Facebook's been kind of cool, but it's got this kind of toxic vibe to it. And Twitter's been okay, but it's hard. It seems like it shifts every week.
Twitter's a weird one.
Reverb Nation. Reverb Nation. We blew up on there for some reason. We have hundreds of thousands of followers on there, but we don't really do much other than we just post songs and clips to our YouTube channel. Sorry, my camera died.
Oh, good.
I think, well, I mean, Brian's taking care of most of our social media stuff, but I agree with what he's saying. There's certainly a toxic, Facebook seems a little more toxic than some of the other platforms. So I was also surprised with TikTok, just the amount of followers in a short time, and how many rock bands really get followed on TikTok.
Very few.
It's not a big thing for rock bands. So
I never would have thought. Yeah,
exactly.
It could be though. I think it'll get bigger as time goes on. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I think that's should be TikTok's slogan. Everybody should be I never would have thought. I put up a simple video like this, and next thing you know, you have 100 million. It's like
I can't believe it's not Instagram. I don't know.
It's so random because it's so random because here we're trying to promote the show and promote artists as well on SoundMojo, independent artists and all that stuff, and it's we'll put together a quick 30-second promo, and then we just put it on, let's say, Instagram Reels, and then it's within 10 minutes, it tells you, oh, you've hit 1,000 views. You're so cool. So you do another one, 20 views. What? What's going on over here?
I thought it was onto something.
Yeah.
And then it's you try TikTok, same thing. It goes up to 500-600, then 17. You're what's going on over here? It's just it feels so random and sporadic at this point. It's just hard to gauge.
we had an Instagram. We used Instagram TV, which is kind of great. But we had one video. It was actually a commercial, an ad for Calloused Heart, 5,000 views, and then the actual song, 300, 400, sometimes 500, just kind of random. Another one's 29. Like,
So weird how that happens,
the commercial, yeah, but the song, not so much. Yeah. You know what? It's just about the music anyway. You just gotta be real, be honest, and be accessible. And it's out of your hands, you know?
Yeah.
It's like someone said to me once, I had someone in the car with me, and I see homeless people, and I go, well, they're needing money. I give them some change. And someone said, well, you don't know what they're going to do with that. I said, that's out of my hands. I just did my part.
You're giving without expectation.
That's between them and their creator. I don't know what they're going to do with it. They can be off, whatever they're going to do with it. That's none of my business. I did my thing. And the same with the music. I think we did our part. And we were honest and accessible and vulnerable. Vulnerability is such a big thing. So many people are trying to look cool and tough and whatever it is, your persona you think it is. I think ours, we just want to be known as that band that will write an honest song and we mean what we're singing. And we want people to feel connected to it. And we're available to the audience, and we want to be accessible, but also vulnerable enough to let the music have its way. I think that's the biggest thing. You got to get out of the way of the music. Yeah. And it's an easy trick to kind of step in front of it. But I found with the guys, Jeremy will write something and then I'll go, well, I'll try this vocal. And it'll either be, well, that's good, or maybe don't do that, do this. And there's no egos about that. It's like, whatever's gonna make the song great. If Jeremy says, no, that's not working, then I won't do that. Or I'll hear what he's going to say. I want you to play that longer. I think that's much more impactful than me holding a note. You continue, or Dave comes up with a drum pattern. That should be where you stand out and we step back, you know?
For the sake of the song.
And live, we have other players too. And then they kind of contribute. Like Eric on keyboards, he had a great organ part on a new song and went, well, that's got to be on the recording. And Mandy, who plays bass, she's been coming up with some cool ideas. And last night we were working on some approaches and intros to some of the songs. And I think it's just that the recognizing the value of our contributions and not getting, but wait, where's my chance to shut? It's not about you. It's about the song. You know? And I think that's what's great with these guys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have said it better. Perfect. Why the band? This has been such a cool hang. You guys are awesome. Anything else that you guys want to add or throw in there to the Innersleeve SoundMojo audience? The floor is yours.
Just buy music, especially for indie artists. Some people say, well, I've streamed your song this many times, and you get 100,000 streams on a song on Spotify. It doesn't really do that much. Actually buy artists. 99 cents isn't going to mean much to you, but it means a lot to artists like us that are trying to keep it going. Because if the music isn't able to continue because we can't fund it, artists are going to just start dropping and you're not going to see any new music. It depends on people putting their money where their love is. And if you love music, take the time to buy. I try to buy my music as much as possible. I might hear something on Spotify, but then I'll go and buy it. Like I bought the new Manchester Orchestra. I bought the new Kings of Leon. I just got my first Foo Fighters album. It was the new one. I was blown away by it. So I mean, it's that idea of buying music. You know, put your money where your passion is, and I think that'll keep music going. So yeah.
Shout out Winnepeg. Shout out Y Band for joining us. We really appreciate you guys, and definitely hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Innersleeve. I think it was a really fun episode, guys.
I live these episodes. Like I have to edit them, I listen to them, and then these songs get stuck in my head for a week or two. Totally. You know, they get stuck in my head. You know, so it's like
start going to listen to the bands that we talked about.
I always listen to them while I'm like editing. You know, obviously before even getting them on, we listen to them and stuff. But I mean, like it's I live with these shows. You know, and that's why I'm always shocked. There's been 30. Wow, holy cow. You know,
it's
or
crazy.
29, whatever it may be.
And episode 30 is going to be a really special one. I mean, we have so much fun stuff coming up for you guys. It is hard to believe, though. You know, the time is flying, so we're happy you're enjoying it. And if you enjoyed this episode, of course, click that subscribe button down below. The subscribe button or the follow button, whether you're tuned in on the video platform, the audio platforms on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you can find your podcasts, you can find Innersleeve and hit the buttons to follow and subscribe. And make sure to click the little notification bell on YouTube to get real-time updates about everything we're doing. Also, we post polls all the time. We want to know what you guys are listening to, who you want to see on the show, what you want to hear us talk about. This is all audience-based, and we love to hear what you guys think. So leave us a comment about next to anything. We'll answer. We'll bring it up on the show. And, of course, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Innersleeve. Catch you guys next time.
Peace.